Was out having lunch with my girlfriend the other day, and we were talking about everything women talk about, love, relationships, what's going on in our lives. And she was basically telling me that, she can't seem to get it together. She's all stressed out. She's not sleeping well. And I told her, I was like, you are going through your midlife transition. So let's talk about something today that midlife women are very good at doing at basically minimizing what is actually happening to us. We call it stress, we call it a bad season, we call it hormones, burnout, being ungrateful, being dramatic, being tired, just being off. And sometimes, to be fair, we are tired. And sometimes people are annoying. And sometimes life is a lot. But sometimes what is actually happening to us is just, we're not just having a rough patch, we are in a midlife transition, and that's really different. And it's not just that you feel moody or restless or weird in your own skin for a few weeks or even months at a time. It is just that your old life, your old ways of being, the one that you built and you mastered and you maintained and you performed and you survived and maybe even succeeded in, no longer fits the woman that you are now. And this is deeply inconvenient, and it's scary because many of us have built our lives around being competent and dependable and useful and basically emotionally low maintenance. So when the life that you built starts rubbing your soul raw and starts bubbling over and no longer fits, we don't immediately think, oh yeah, I'm in a developmental threshold. No. Basically, what we think is, what is wrong with me? So, in this video, I want to talk to you about the 6 signs you may be in a midlife transition and not just having a bad season, and why recognizing this matters, because naming the season changes how you respond to it. Okay. So, the first sign is your life still looks good on paper, but you don't feel alive when you're inside it. And that's one of the strangest parts of being in your midlife transition. Nothing may look objectively disastrous, but you're still functioning, you're still showing up, you're still doing what needs to be done, but the life you're living feels flat, airless, weirdly dead. And you may look around and think, okay, I should be grateful. I also have responsibilities and people who need me and things that I built, but you still feel something in you feels absent. And that matters because a bad season usually makes life feel temporarily hard. Temporarily is the key point. But a midlife transition makes life feel misaligned. You feel out of alignment. And those are not the same things. And so basically, sign two, you feel a little restless in the way that no amount of productivity fixes. Okay. This is not the cute kind of restlessness where you buy a new journal and you reorganize your closet and now, boom, you're healed. Okay, it goes way deeper than that. You feel irritated, you feel cramped, you feel bored, and you just feel like emotionally itchy. You can't quite settle, and something keeps nudging you. It keeps bothering you, and it's tapping you on the shoulder at 3:17 in the morning, urging you to face it and to look at it. And you may not have the language for it yet, but you know this, that the way you've been living is getting harder and harder and harder to tolerate. And this is often a sign that your inner life is no longer willing to stay in full compliance with your actual outer life. So frankly, it's the rude side of the psyche, but it's also very useful. And sign three is the roles that used to define you are starting to feel too small. This is identity friction. Maybe you spent years being the strong one, the responsible one. The wife, the mother, the helper, the achiever, the really good employee, the woman who keeps everything running and you don't make a scene. Okay. And then somewhere in midlife, those identities start feeling tight. Not because they were fake or false, but because they are no longer enough. And then you start asking questions like, who am I when I'm not performing this role? What do I want now? What is actually mine? And what actually fits me at this stage of my life? And you can feel destabilizing because old identities basically give a structure. Even painful identities can feel safer than basically wide open space. But outgrowing an identity is not a failure, it's development. Sign 4 is you bury your feelings, but they're getting louder and louder. Midlife often has a nasty little talent for bringing things to the surface that you didn't even know that were running for years. So basically, all that grief and anger and regret and disappointment and numbness and longing and old resentment, old dreams and old wounds, things you managed to basically stay busy and stay useful and stay distracted and saying that you're fine. And suddenly those feelings are harder to mute. They slowly start bubbling to the surface. That does not necessarily mean that you're getting worse. It may even mean that you're finally at a stage in life where your system is no longer willing to subsidize your avoidance. Okay, so that's why they're basically slowly bubbling to the surface. That's not punishment, that's just exposure. And exposure, while very unpleasant, can also be clarifying because you cannot build a true life while living in chronic emotional evasion. You can't do it. Okay, so sign 5, you're questioning things that you used to automatically accept. And this one matters a lot. This one, a lot of us do automatically. So you start questioning your routines, your sacrifices, your relationships, your work, your pace, your obligations, your silence, and your self abandonment. That was a big one for me. Things that you once accepted as this just life, it is what it is, they start looking a little different. You begin to notice the cost of the life you built. Not only what it gave you, but what it asked you to suppress in order to maintain it. And that can bring up a whole lot of guilt, a whole lot of shame, because we as women, we're trained to think that questioning our lives means that we are selfish, that we are unstable, that we are disloyal or impossible to please. But questioning is not betrayal. Questioning is consciousness, being conscious. And it's the beginning of becoming more honest about the deal you took and that you're living under. And lastly, sign 6, your tolerance for self abandonment is dropping. Now, this was a huge one for me. I self abandoned myself for many, many years, many decades, and I didn't even realize what I was doing until up until maybe a year or two ago. Um, the whole self pleasing, putting others before myself, um, and I know it's a trauma response. So, this is one of the clearest signs. You do not just want relief, you want congruence. You want your life to be in alignment. You want your outer life to match your inner truth more closely. And that's why you have to start being a little bit more honest, way more honest with yourself. You are less willing to keep smiling through things that cost you too much, less willing to stay disconnected from your own body, your own desires, your own needs, wants, and less willing to keep performing a version of yourself that no longer feels real. That does not mean you need to like burn your whole daggone life down. And thank goodness, because most of us don't have the energy for all that dramatic reinvention montage with wind machines and a soundtrack. But what it does mean is that something in you is asking for a more honest life. Not a perfect life, not a fantasy life, but an honest one. So if you're seeing yourself in any one of these stages, I want you to say something clearly. This does not automatically mean you're broken. It does not mean that you are weak. It does not mean that you have failed at midlife, femininity, adulthood, marriage, work, or emotional regulation. It may mean you're crossing a threshold, and thresholds are very uncomfortable. They confuse the old self before they clarify the new one. And in philosophy, they call that a liminal space. One life, one phase is slowly dissolving, going away, and the other one is not quite born yet. That's why so many of us misread this season, because we think that the discomfort itself is the problem, when often the discomfort is the signal to the threshold or the transition. And it's the signal that your old life, your old identity, the old rules, the old arrangements that you have with yourself can no longer um, carry the truth of who you're becoming. And that's why this is a wake up call. Not because it's cute, and it's, trust me, it's usually not cute. We all know it's not cute, but because it wakes you up to the gap between the life you were living and the life that actually fits. So if this is resonating with you and you know that you are what you're dealing with is more than a bad season, I created a 6-week online course called Midlife Reinvented, where I go deeper into what is really happening in midlife when your old way of living no longer fits, not just physically, but psychologically and emotionally too. Because a lot of us have been given symptom advice, productivity hacks, and generic encouragement, but very few of us have been given a real map. Okay, so this course is for the woman who wants to understand the deeper pattern underneath the restlessness, the confusion, the identity friction, and the sense that something in your life needs to change, but not quite sure what yet. And no, this is not blowing up your life. It's not about disappearing into the woods or becoming a brand new woman by like Tuesday. Okay. It's about understanding the actual transition you are in so you can respond to it with more honesty and more clarity and a lot less self blame. So I will put the link to my website. I have a free masterclass on there as well to get you started. And if this video described where you're at, let me know in the comments which sign hit you the hardest. Because there's something powerful about realizing you are not the only woman standing in the middle of life that looks functional from the outside and just feels a little bit too small on the inside. And it's not the end of you. This is the beginning of seeing more truth. So don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.